It's a beautiful terminology that I was discussing with one of our other NMDs, Carla Thomas, today. The concept of giving to get. And this business, this model of business, more than any other business, I think, really gives you an opportunity to build success in your life. And success is however you measure it, whether it's success in personal development, success in finances, success in health, success in spirituality. This is one business that really harnesses the concept of giving in order to receive. So there's been a number of situations in the last couple of months where I've had the opportunity to give of my time, to give of my talent, or to give of my finances. And as a result of doing that giving, I have received 1,000-fold. And it might not necessarily be the person to which, or this thing to which you have given, that you actually receive. You might find it comes from somewhere else. The universe might make it that receiving, or that the universe gives you something else that you were really requiring at the time. So I know in the last several weeks that I have received tenfold from the time, effort, money, wisdom that I have given. And really, the way that you grow this business ultimately is in that paying forward mentality, that service to others. And you will actually get paid financially. And at the end of the day, guys, we're in this business. We're in business to generate an income, whatever it is for. Many of you went to Mastermind and Money on the weekends, so you ultimately know that it's quite okay to want to generate an income out of this business. But you will get paid in this business model by being of service to others. So there's a couple of levels. Firstly, service to your customers. So if you are providing good customer service, so this is the after sales service, this is making sure they're taking their product, this is making sure they understand the why they're actually taking Juice Plus, what Juice Plus is doing in their body, you're going to have raving fans. And by having raving fans, that's a referral base for you. That's a whole new network that you can tap into. But it's also the opportunity to on-sell. You know, the opportunity to go from not just a premium order, but to an Omega order and a complete order and so on. So you've got that ultimate pay it forward. By generating greater volume through your custom, you have the opportunity to move up through the marketing plan, which means that every time you move up, you increase in your commissions. And so that means that every future sale, you're actually going to generate more of an income for yourself. By having a bigger customer base or customers that have more of our products, you're going to have a greater opportunity to qualify your business. And in doing so, you'll unlock that beach money. You'll unlock that extra 4% on any of your downline team. So you can see how paying it forward actually pays it back to you. What about service to your team? Well, there's lots of things that you can service them with. You can help them get customers, so you can help them with their conversions. You can do events for them or do three-way calls that are ultimately going to grow their team or grow their businesses. And that's where you have the opportunity to unlock that 4% on all the business that they're generating. Service to the community by holding events, opening events up to the rest of the community, by attending events and sharing your story, means by helping others, you will find that comes back to you with them sharing their stories and opening their event to you. So I really want to challenge you guys before I'm hoping that our guests will be on very soon. But I can see Dawn. Hey, Dawn. I really want to challenge you all to think about in the next few days how in your daily method of operation, how you can be of service to others. So step number one is, when you're doing your connections with people, I want you to go into those connections with the sentence in your mind, how can I make somebody's day? Instead of thinking, how can I sell someone Juice Plus or how can I recruit them to my team? Think, how can I make this person's day? How can I make them feel really special in all the connections that you're making? Number two, I want you to think about your customers. And in connecting with your customers, I want you to think about, how can I be of service to this customer? How can I ensure they're more efficiently taking their Juice Plus, their product arrives on time, they get the product that they're wanting, they understand why they're taking Juice Plus and how it benefits them. The third thing is, how can I be of service to my team? If you have a team, they are your most valuable asset. If you're qualifying your business, you have the opportunity to unlock those extra bonuses. So how can you be of service to your team? Ask how you can help them with any conversions. Ask them how you can assist them with any three-way calls. Can you do an event? What sort of event could you do to help them service their customers or their prospects? And finally, how can you be of service to the community? Or even how can you be of service to the world? How can you get your message out there? And by getting your message out there, by sharing your story, whether it be about the business or the product, you then have that opportunity to practice and get better at your story. And when you get better at your story, you get stronger, you build your self-belief, and you develop yourself, you personally develop. So guys, I really want you to take those action steps on board over the next few days when you're touching your business every day, no matter how much or how little. Really start to think about that giving to get mentality. And so on that note, I would love to invite onto the call Winter and Dawn, who I can see, two beautiful twinnies. You guys, are you seriously? Are you sisters?
Morning.
Hi. So
Evening for you guys.
Oh no, I want to just start out by saying a massive thank you for getting up at 5 a.m. To do this call for us all the way over in Western Australia. And we have a lot of team who are actually already in bed asleep. They've bailed early because it's 10 o'clock plus where they are, who will definitely be on to watch the recording. So I just want to thank you from our West Australian team and our greater team. Thank you so much for jumping on the call tonight with us. We really appreciate it. Now, I'm going to let you guys tell your stories, but I was absolutely gobsmacked by Winter, your story at the Sacramento conference in the US, the regional conference in April of this year. And what I loved too was the opportunity, Dawn, to speak with you backstage and learn a lot about your story as well, which as an empowered woman, as two empowered women, I have been just humbled by listening to your stories. And tonight the theme of tonight was to talk about no excuses, because you ladies have absolutely no excuse in your life for the achievements that you have. So I'm now going to zip it, and I'm just going to hand over to both of you to let everyone know a little bit about you and your stories.
Sounds good. And just for reference, about how many minutes do you want us to share for?
Oh, you can just keep going. Our call goes for about 30. But you know what? I know your stories will totally inspire. So you just go as long as you need.
Sounds good. So I'll just start off and share a little bit of our kind of from my point of view, my story growing up. I grew up in a small town in northern Michigan called Gaylord. I grew up on my grandparents' her parents' 2,000-acre farm. So I was always around healthy food growing up. I would go out into the fields and pick carrots, like literally like the size of this entire screen, like massive, and like like half of a Frisbee size round probably. So they were huge and just had like all this amazing produce, and loved eating healthy. My mom would always cook us all this like home cooked meals and stuff for dinners. And so I was that kid growing up who brought Tupperware to school lunches. And so it would like be warming it up in the microwave, and other kids would be like, what on earth? She has like basil and tomato lasagna today. Like what? And so I was always around this healthy environment. I was an athlete growing up since I was just 5 years old. I tried about every different sport. So I started off trying, I did swim team, I did basketball camps and soccer camps with my brothers, and then got into running and triathlons, and eventually kind of stuck with those two. And so I was in, like I said, a small town, and there weren't a lot of kids triathlon races. And so I actually had to compete against adults and just do like the adult triathlons growing up as a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, because there weren't all these options of having those kids races. And so I didn't use it as an excuse to just say, oh, well, I guess I'll just wait till I'm older or not do these races. I used it to like fuel myself and to like fuel my passion and desire for the sport. And so would go out there and have so much fun racing against adults and have so much fun passing them, and they'd be looking at me so weird, like, what on earth? There's this like little tiny girl passing me right now. And so I grew up doing these triathlons and running races and things like that. And of course, it was mainly just for fun growing up. Like I was always super competitive. obviously 3 brothers, so we were always doing some sort of racing or competition, whether it just be who can draw the best elephant or who can ride their bike the fastest around our driveway. And when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, I had to kind of shift my focus a little bit and really shift how I was using my sports as a way to help others. So my dad was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of prostate cancer on his 40th birthday. And so with the help of my mom, of course, from the business side of things, because I was only 8, we formed Team Winter, a nonprofit organization for prostate cancer research and awareness. And I now was going to use my athletics as a platform to be able to help speak out about prostate cancer, because it's more common than breast cancer, but the men don't want to talk about it. So a 8-9-year-old girl was going to talk about it for them. And so I began getting the blue ribbon out there for prostate cancer awareness. I was the Iron Kids ambassador for several years. So Iron Kids is a youth triathlon series in the US, and they would have they had, I think at one time, 20, 30 different races across the summer in the US. So I would go to these different ones and tell my story, speak about Team Winter, but also encourage the other kids to not only race for themselves, but to race for a cause and to live an active, healthy, and positive lifestyle. And it's important to know here that we still didn't know about Team Winter at this time, or about Juice Plus at this time. So I had formed Team Winter, and unfortunately, my dad passed away only 10 months after being diagnosed, so he didn't even make it to his 41st birthday. But I continued to spread awareness for prostate cancer and for Team Winter in memory of him and all those who have passed away from prostate cancer. So after I was the Iron Kids ambassador for several years, also going and competing at the different races, I would get up, I'd speak at the event, and then I'd turn around 2 minutes later, go race, and then finish, and then immediately go around as the ambassador and kind of cheer on the other kids and stuff. And so I kind of had 2 roles when I was at the different races, as a competitor, but also as the ambassador, and sharing my story and help encouraging the other kids, going into schools across the US and sports teams and stuff, and speak about my message, just to hopefully inspire some kids to go out there and chase after their dreams. Doesn't matter where they come from, doesn't matter if it's a small town, you only have one parent, you can still go out there and set the highest and biggest dreams you can and chase after them. So after Iron Kids, let's see, where are we at in my story? So I did an Olympic distance triathlon when I was 8 years old, and that was the last race my dad ever saw me finish. And it was a race many said, "You're too young to be doing this. Wait till you're older. Like, you're never going to finish. You're only 8 and you're trying to do this race." It's about a mile swim, 25-mile bike, and 6.2-mile run. And so I had finished this race in under 4 hours. As I said, the last race, my dad would meet me at that finish line. And after that, I was always thinking, what could I do that's bigger and better than this? After my dad passed away, what could I do in his memory? And I was sitting on a couch just in our home in Michigan, and I was flipping through the pages of the Guinness Book of World Records. And I came across the youngest person in the world to run a marathon on all 7 continents. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this record is for me. Like, I want this record for my dad, Mom. And so little did I know that a couple of years later, we would actually start planning for doing these marathons. And so together, my mom and I became the first mother and daughter in the world to run a marathon on all 7 continents. And I became the youngest person in the world to do the feat by finishing before I turned 15. So I was 14 and 10 months or so. And when I had first found the record, it was some 27-year-old guy from somewhere. And then as we started planning, of course, it started going down, because then it was like 23, 17 when I started them. And so it's kind of a race against time, but it was an amazing journey. We got to go to far ends of the earth, from Antarctica to Africa to Mongolia. We did the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, which is the toughest marathon in the world, because and I'll actually save this part for her to talk about why we did that one. Not completely by choice, but she'll talk about that one. And yeah, and then we went to New Zealand. Sorry we didn't come to you guys, but and then finished in Athens, Greece on the original course of the first marathon. So it was quite an adventure. And I still look at the pictures and I'm like, is that honestly real? Like, do we do that and go to all these different countries and finish all these different races? Because most of the time the start line was actually harder than the finish line because getting into the races was so difficult. And she'll touch on this a little bit because she was the one that was actually trying to get me to the race directors to be able to get into these different races. And so a lot of times just getting to the start line was an entire feat in itself, especially when we were going to places like Antarctica. So in the midst of doing these marathons, and I actually kind of found a new sport in a way. So I grew up ski racing. My grandpa was a ski instructor for over 50 years now,
60 years.
Almost 60 years now, her dad. And so I grew up skiing and loved ski racing. But one of my issues was being a runner. Also, I was tiny. So I was like 80, 90 pounds and 5 foot tall when I was doing the marathons. So I had trouble getting down the hill and have enough weight. And when I was at an event in New York City for the Women's Sports Foundation, I met Emily Cook, who's now my coach, but was an athlete for several years in the sport of aerial skiing, went to the Olympics several times. And she saw a little clip of me skiing because I was being presented an award there and thought, hey, like, I want this girl to come try my sport. So she came up to me after and was like, hey, like, this is who I am. Like, why don't you come out to Park City to try aerials? And I was like, okay, like, sure. Like, I'll come try it. I had no idea what it was. But I knew it combined two things that I love, like just skiing in general, but then also I loved messing around in my backyard trampoline. Like, I learned like a front flip and I don't even know if I'd barely learned a back flip yet, but just had these fun experiences on the trampoline. So I wanted to combine the two. So I went out to Park City, Utah to try this sport, took my skis and my wetsuit and my boots and then headed out there and tried it, fell in love with the sport. And so after the week-long tryout camp, I got a summer scholarship to be able to train in Park City for the entire summer with their program for free. And so I went out there, I trained throughout that whole summer. I literally had moved out there permanently, like after only trying this sport for a week. Like, I think we had the tryout camp in June or July, and I moved out there in August so that I could train for the rest of the summer until October, and then jumped on snow for the first time that year. So doing backflips on skis on snow. And for those that don't know what aerial skiing is, it's basically hucking yourself off of a big jump, doing a bunch of flips and twists with skis on, and then trying to land on your feet. And so that's what I've been mainly focused on for the last several years. I've been doing aerials for 7 years now. So I started when I was 13 years old. So right around the time I was doing those marathons as well. So I'd be getting up at 4:35 a.m. to go do a 15 to 20 mile training run, and then would have my aerial skiing training in the afternoon because I didn't want, the coaches saying, oh, you can't do this because, it's going to interfere with your ski training or whatever. But I found it actually kind of helped the two because while they're both very different sports, they kind of complement each other because of the cross training, which I'm a huge advocate of. So I had like the cardio and the running side of things, and then I had also the strength side of things from the aerial skiing. So I thought it kind of worked together pretty well, even though it wasn't the most fun doing 20-mile training runs before having to climb upstairs to be able to water ramp, but we made it work. And so along this journey of aerial skiing is around the time I was doing both the Iron Kids and the aerial skiing is when I found Juice Plus and started really using Juice Plus. So when I was at the Iron Kids triathlons as the ambassador, that's where I came across Juice Plus originally and met our good friend Heather. And so she invited us to check out, the business side of things, but also the products, because I had met her at a booth at one of the Iron Kids. And so I immediately saw what she had, and it was just little fruits and vegetables and berries in a gummy. And as a kid, I was like, yes, free samples, please, and food especially. And so I would try them, and I brought them over to my mom and brothers for them to try, and they loved them. And my mom immediately fell in love with the research side of things. And so we all got on Juice Plus. And so then throughout the rest of my triathlons, and I also did like some Spartan mud and obstacle course races and Xterra triathlons and things like that. And then into my aerial skiing, I've had Juice Plus to be able to back me and to be able to be that nutritional support, because as I go to different races across the world and different competitions now as an aerial skier, I don't change my equipment. I don't change my skis right before a big competition. So I'm not going to change my nutrition, and I want to keep it as consistent as I can. And a lot of times that can be tough because when we're going to places like Russia and Belarus and China, the food obviously is going to be very different over there. And many times we don't have any fruits and vegetables, or you don't want to eat some of them because they're washed with just the sink water, and you don't know if it could be contaminated or whatnot. And so I am able to take my Juice Plus and my Complete to be able to have the shakes and things like that. So at least I know I'm getting some nutrition into my body and keeping at least some part of that consistent as I travel and train and compete across the world. So along the way of doing this aerial skiing, I've had a pretty good streak of being very healthy and no injuries. And then it is a very physically dangerous sport in a way because, we are falling from 45 feet in the sky and trying to land on our feet. And so I unfortunately had 2 big injuries back to back going into the 2018 Winter Olympic season. So the first one was in August, September of 2017. So I was training into the pool, which is what we do all summer, off big plastic ramps into a big swimming pool. And I was practicing a new trick, and my hand was just slightly in a different position than usual because I was just learning this trick. And so it was a little bit in front of my face. And when I went to hit the water, my hand hit the water first and drove through the entire side of my right face, fracturing this whole side. And I had to get 2 titanium plates put in. And this was going into a Olympic season. And so I was devastated and thought, oh my God, like, how am I going to finish the rest of the season now? And so I had to get plastic surgery to put 2 titanium plates put in my face. And I thought it was going to be weeks and weeks, this long recovery. But with the help of the surgeon in Michigan, as well as a guy called Jeremy Murray, who has Murray masks, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen, but like they're like the clear masks like some basketball players have and stuff. And so it would protect my face so I could get back jumping sooner. So I was jumping just 3 weeks after fracturing the whole side of my face, just 3 weeks, so not even a month. And I thought, yes, I have done it. Like, I have gotten back. Like, I could train now the last 2 weeks or so of the summer to be able to really prepare for the winter season. And then one of the first competitions back in January at an Olympic qualifying competition in Park City, I did my jump, and then there was a lot of soft snow on the landing, and it caught my ski as I was going through the transition at the bottom. So basically after the whole jump and everything was done, and it caught my ski and yanked my knee basically sideways, and it snapped my ACL. And so this was just several weeks before the Olympics and an Olympic qualifying competition. And so this took me out for the next 6 months. And so this was a obviously massive setback and took me out of something I had been training these pretty much the half of my life for. And having that devastation and that sadness and anger, I needed to put it to something productive. And so throughout the entire recovery process, I was determined to get back and to get healthy again, because you're injured and it takes you away from your sport. But also a lot of people don't realize is it takes you away from just everyday things too. Like I went on a cruise with my family, but I still had a brace and stuff. So you can't really do all the stuff I'd normally be doing because I've been so thankful to have such great health my entire life that I, then having that one thing taken away was kind of devastating, even just from the point of view of everyday life. And so I really focused on healing myself as much as I can, taking my Juice Plus. When I actually first tore my ACL, the doctors there all didn't think I tore my ACL because my knee was not swollen at all. Like, they're like, there's no way you tore your ACL. Like, there's no inflammation. And I think that was partly due to the omegas that I had just started taking like within that year, because I just do not swell and don't hold a ton of inflammation like other people might. So I'm going to pass it over here. But before I do, after the injuries, there was kind of a happy ending because I recovered after the 6 months and then had my best winter ever that I've ever had. I finished the season by becoming the 7th best ranked female aerial skier in the world. I also won our US national championships. So all of that 6 months of recovering and working hard to get back was worth it. And in a way, it also kind of refreshed my brain because, you know, when you get something taken away from you, you're even more eager to get back. And so then I was just having so much fun that season too, being able to compete and travel. So that's a little bit about my side of things and how I've used the product. I also started the business several years ago, but then really started to build it as I got injured because I had so much time that I was able to have this thing to be able to help others and occupy my time and be able to kind of create that financial freedom for myself. So I'm not always having to rely on this one.
Thanks, Winter, for sharing your story. I'm Dawn Estelle. I'm a board certified obstetrician gynecologist and been practicing for about 18 years. And more importantly, I'm the mother of a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old Winter, who's now 20, which is hard to believe, and a 22-year-old son. And so, you know, my story goes way back to, you know, when my husband was ill, and I knew nothing about Juice Plus, and here I was trying to work full-time to take care of my family, raise 4 tiny kids who were then 5, 7, 9, and 11, and dealing with a very sick husband. And just a year prior to that, I had started my training for my first Ironman. I'd done marathons, you know, I've done some small triathlons, but, you know, when I crossed the finish line of some marathons, I thought, this isn't it. You know, there's got to be more. And so my brother-in-law introduced me to the sport of Ironman, and that's how Winter got into triathlons. She would see us doing this on the weekend, and she's like, hey, I'm not going to sit here, I'm going to join along. And so during the diagnosis of my husband, I continued to train for Ironman Lake Placid, which was in 2008. And, you know, I could have used every excuse in the world to stop my training, but I had to do it to keep me mentally and physically healthy, and to keep chasing some of my goals as well. And so during his illness, I did go on to complete my first Ironman. And unfortunately, my husband couldn't be there, and he was actually at Mayo Clinic undergoing treatments, and him and all the nursing staff were watching as I completed my first Ironman. And so I could have used every excuse in the world not to do it. You know, I had 4 kids to take care of. I was the sole provider for our family. My husband was a stay-home dad, you know, taking care of the kids. And, you know, he couldn't do that anymore with being sick. And so I finished that Ironman and continued to work full time. I remember laying there in bed the day he died, wondering, should I go to work or should I stay home? Is this going to be his last day? Should I, you know, make my poor patients cancel their surgeries? And fortunately, I made the decision to stay home. And Michael was surrounded by his 4 children and myself and his family when he passed away peacefully. And so, you know, they die of malnutrition. Everybody with cancer dies of malnutrition. And if it's not the malnutrition that kills them, it's the cancer, because the chemo doesn't work because of malnutrition. And so, you know, I remember his sister brought over this juicer and was trying to juice for him. And, you know, everybody was trying to do everything they could to save his life. And, you know, 10 months is a short time to live from the time you're diagnosed. And so, as Winter said, we had to keep going as a family. I couldn't stop working. I had to, you know, keep taking care of them. And so, you know, when Winter sat on the couch that day and said, hey, I want this world record to, you know, get the message out about prostate cancer in memory of my dad, how could I not support her? You know, here she is, 9 years old, wanting to run a marathon in every continent. I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to pull this off? I've been a strong believer in, you know, kids chasing their dreams, even when they were little. And so I said, okay, we're going to do it. And like Winter said, the hardest part was getting her to the start line, because nobody was going to let, you know, a 10 or 11-year-old run a marathon. Even countries like Africa, where you think, well, that's going to be easy because, you know, Africans run all the time. And so even in Africa, you know, it was very difficult to get her into a marathon. And, you know, countries like Australia wouldn't even look at us. I mean, that's why we had to go to New Zealand. And, you know, Inca Trail, incredible story. You know, I remember coming across Inca Trail Marathon, and I said, there's no way we're doing this. I go, I have no doubt about her finishing the race, but I had known that, I was the type of mom who was not going to just take her to all over the world and sit on the sidelines and watch. I said, if she's going to run these marathons, the least I can do is run them as well. And so, but I knew there was no way I could finish that marathon because there's time restrictions. You have to finish it, within a certain number of hours. Otherwise, it doesn't count. And so there was no way I was going to spend all that money and time getting to the Inca Trail and not finishing. And lo and behold, that's the only marathon that in South America that would let us run. And so we ended up doing the Inca Trail. Winter set the course record, fastest female to ever run the Inca Trail in 9 hours. People take 3 days to walk it. She ran it in 9.5 hours. And it happened to be one of my best marathons. I finished in 11 hours. So, so we went on to do all these marathons. And along the way, thank God, we came across Juice Plus, but it was too late for my husband, because even if he would have lived a day longer, an hour longer, a week, a month longer, it would have been time he had with his children. And so it was hindsight. We found Juice Plus about a year after he passed away. And when Winter brought me this gummy, I'm thinking to myself, what kind of Flintstone is this? Flintstone vitamins, what kind of sugary thing is this? And, immediately I was handed the medical evidence and the literature. And there was about 30 medical studies at that time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so I immediately got my kids on it. I did do the business side, but just, I was a full-time physician, a full-time mom. I never remarried. And so it was a lot on my plate. And so I got my children into the Children's Health Study for 5 years and continue to do, amazing things with my children. I had lots of excuses I could have used in life. Oh, poor me, poor single mom raising 4 children. My kids can't do these things because they don't have a dad. And instead, I had a different approach. I've always told my kids, see it all, do it all, be it all. And that's kind of my mantra. And so I would get up at 5 a.m. and I would train every single day because I never knew what this girl over here was going to throw me into. Not only did we, I do 2 more Ironmans after that, a marathon on every continent, like Winter said, to become the first person to ever do something in the world is something nobody can take away from us. Somebody can beat her record, but they can never beat the first mother-daughter to do a marathon on every continent. And so I just, she had so many things coming up. So we ended up doing Spartan World Championships, which is the toughest obstacle course in the world. And so here we both were doing the World Championships. We did the Ropa Run. And the Ropa Run is a run from Hamburg, Germany, all the way to Rotterdam, Amsterdam. And it's the biggest cancer run in Europe. And we had to run 1 kilometer sprints for 2 days. It was crazy. And so I never knew what my kids were going to throw me into because they knew that I was the type of mom who was never going to expect something out of them that I wouldn't do myself. And so I've put on the racquetball, gear and played against my kids. I've put on lacrosse gear. I've put on football gear. I've went off her water ramps. And so I've done everything my kids did because my kids can never say, well, Mom, you've never done it. You don't know what it's like. I do know what it's like. And continued to be a full-time physician. My husband was a huge hunter. I've taken my kids up in the remote mountains by myself and taught them how to hunt and taught them how to fish. And, because you only live once, and I didn't want my kids to ever say, we couldn't do it because we don't have a dad, or my mom had to, to work. And so, just like being an Olympian, I let Winter move out on her own at 13 years old. She never came home, 13 years old. And thank goodness for FaceTime and Skype and things like that. So that literally we would put her on the counter every evening and she was part of the family, whether she was there or not. And so you can't chase Olympic dreams sitting on your couch, in a rural town, in Michigan and Oregon. You've got to let them go. And so, I can't tell people enough how important it is to support their kids because they can't do it alone. She couldn't have set that world record alone. She couldn't be chasing her Olympic dreams. And so the interesting thing is that when she got injured, yes, it was devastating as a mom, as a physician, but other athletes, there was 5 other athletes that tore their ACL the same time she did. She recovered so much faster. Plus mentally, she was kept intact because she focused on her business, her Juice Plus business. And she had something else to focus on, because as an athlete, you get so focused on your sport that when you get injured, it's devastating. The suicide rate, the depression rate is astronomical in athletes. And she not only was nourishing her body, but she mentally was taking care of herself and helping other people. And that's when I really took off with the business, because they say you need a buddy. You need a buddy to do the business, to grow your Juice Plus business. And so that's when Winter and I linked arms, and I said, you know what? I'm tired as a physician of putting Band-Aids on Americans. 70% of Americans are in a health crisis with poor nutrition, which causes diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I mean, the Americans are in trouble, and it's getting worse. 1 in 3 kids are going to become diabetic. And so I was tired of just putting Band-Aids and not healing people. And with Juice Plus, I'm healing people. I'm healing not only individuals, I'm healing families. And I can do that with Winter alongside me. And, you know, she said, I want to be a doctor just like you. And I said, no, I'm going to show you a better way. I'm going to show you a better lifestyle and a way to help millions of people, not thousands of people. And so I steered her towards entrepreneurship and nutrition at the University of Utah. She's a full-time, almost full-time college student at the same time as being a national athlete. You know, she's on the U.S. ski team, which she's been on for now 3 years. And so together we are changing lives by, you know, events like this. We have wellness events at her home, at my home. And so it's been life-changing. And eventually I hope to transition out of traditional medicine and just spend all my time wellness coaching for families. And so, you know, my point to all of you parents out there is you can do it all. And you have the power, you have the tools, and you have the gift to help millions of people. And so everybody has their story. Like our story, yeah, it's a lot bigger, and a lot of bad things happened, but a lot of good things happened. But everybody has their story. And so I just encourage all of you to share your story, help people, because I'm sure that you have similar health crisis going on in your country. And we're here to help you. You know, when we were asked to do this morning, it wasn't even a second thought. You know, Winter's normally in a different state, and we happen to be here together. This is her time to sleep in, and it wasn't even an issue for us to get up at 4:30 this morning and do this and share our story. And so thanks for listening.
Wow, ladies, incredible. I think everyone is just absolutely gobsmacked. I knew how big your story was, and I really needed everybody to hear it. And Winter, can I just ask you, and Dawn the same, this applies to you as well. You guys quite clearly have that no excuses mentality. What is it when you have these setbacks? What is it that you're telling yourself? What is your mindset in those situations? Because I think it applies to every aspect of our life. We all have obstacles, right? And I honestly believe that obstacles are the way. How do you feel when you have these sort of little hiccups, these little lumps in your road? What do you tell yourself?
Well, usually when it first happens, of course, you're going to have all these negative emotions of fear and sadness and anger and whatnot. Like, I wasn't immediately like, okay, like I got this when I tore my ACL. No, I was furious, and I, was, like I said, heartbroken. And so that like entire night, I literally was like crying half the night because I was so upset. And you have to give yourself that little bit of time to be able to let the emotions out and to be able to kind of express those feelings, because if you try to keep them bottled up, then that's not going to be good either. And so you need to give yourself a little bit of time to be able to, have those emotions. And everybody's different, but for me, that was, that couple days, whether it was the week, whatever it was. And then you kind of have to say, okay, like I let that out. Like now we need to start focusing on something else. And so instead of keep focusing on the past and keep focusing on the bad things, to be able to, redirect, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Like, what are my new goals? Like when I tore my ACL, that had taken me out of the Olympics, but I, reset that goal. I said, okay, well, we got another Olympics, and now I'm going to set the goal of getting back by this date so I can start water ramping and set these mini goals along the way. So it's all about, I think, expressing your emotions, but then, rechanging your focus and setting new goals, and to take the small wins. So as I was going along, when I can first start walking again, or first could start running again, even if it was at like 50% of my body weight in this like machine we have, like I was so excited and so stoked just for those small wins along the way.
And we call it the 3-second rule in our house. You have 3 seconds to get over it. And it's really more than 3 seconds. Sometimes it's 3 days, sometimes it's 3 hours, but you can't let your emotions control you. And everything happens for a reason. My kids know that. Their dad died for a reason, and yes, we wish we could have him back, but we made sense out of, why he passed away and the good that has come from that. And so, Winter's done a lot of videos. If you've not seen her video on grit, you need to watch. Just Google Winter Vinecki, Marathon Every Continent, grit. She did Grit It Out. It was a video that was done, and it was showed in 1,600 schools across America, telling kids that things are going to happen along the way in life, and you got to grit it out. So important with what kids are going through. There's so much suicide in our school systems now, with kids at young ages, because emotions take control and they think that's the end, and they don't see any other way out. And so, that's the rule in our house. You got 3 seconds to get over it and figure out, okay, what's next? How are we going to overcome this and move on?
Yeah, I love that. And look, so much of the stories that you have both shared tonight have beautiful analogies with our business. Dawn, I was listening to you talk, and the language that you were using was, how can I make this happen? Not, can I make this happen? It's, how can I make this happen? Always looking for the solutions. The fact that you are Winter's dream keeper, like at no point have you ever said that's not possible, Winter. It's all about keeping her dreams front and center. And, that is what we do for our teams is we anchor them to their dreams, and we keep their dreams. You're the ultimate walk by her side. The fact that you've done the triathlons, you've done the marathons by her side, that's what we do for our team. We get down in the trenches with them and we walk with them in this business side by side. And ultimately, you guys just didn't allow the excuses, as you said. You just turn it into, look at the positive side of it, how you can actually create goodness out of the difficult times. So, I love one of our NMDs in her acceptance speech turned around when she was going through the tough times, and her husband said to her, do you think you can ever look your child in the eye and just say, I couldn't be bothered? So, what your stories have shown us tonight is the ultimate, that both of you could be bothered. You could be bothered achieving, and you can be bothered supporting, and you can be bothered moving forward. And I really love that. And, in the theme of tonight, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for giving us of your time and giving us of your stories. I know that it's kind of come back to you in 1,000 different ways. But just to wrap things up, I would love everybody just to pop on the line and express your gratitude to these two amazing women. And I'm just so grateful for the fact that you're part of our wider Juice Plus community, and I'm really grateful for that. So thank you so much for your time. We'll wrap it up here, and if I can ask everybody to